time now for the Wiltfong Whiparound with our Director of Recruiting, said man, Steve Wiltfong. Steve, let's start with that crystal ball. Michael has a ton of options, but what is it about Georgia and his recruitment that led you to making this prediction?
Yeah, this is one of the most explosive players in the Peach State on either side of the ball. Georgia likes him in the secondary, and I think with Fran Brown leading the charge, he is one of the ace recruiters in America. At one point, when he was working for Matt Rule, basically recruited that whole Baylor class. You got Kirby Smart heavily involved. He visited in March. He visited in April. He's locked in as official for Georgia the weekend of May 19th. And I just love the way it's trending for Georgia. This is one of their top targets moving forward. They're battling South Carolina, Georgia Tech, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt, as you said. But I think Georgia's got all the momentum going into that official visit.
Steve, Georgia still has a lot of pieces left on the board as they chase Michigan for the top spot in the composite team recruiting rankings. Let's talk about two 5-stars in particular, Dylan Raiola, the quarterback from the state of Arizona, and 5-star safety KJ Bolden. You and I both have a prediction in for the Bulldogs when it comes to Raiola, the nation's #1 prospect. No one has put in any predictions for Bolden. What's the latest in Georgia's pursuit of both of those 5-stars?
Well, I love Georgia's position. You know, we talk about Dylan Raiola. He's only got one official visit scheduled right now. It's back to Athens for what will be a 7th time, the weekend of June 2nd. The Bulldogs are also hosting a scavenger hunt in May where prospects look and find Kirby Smart, one of the cooler summer recruiting events. We'll see if Dylan Raiola makes it to that, but we know KJ Bolden will be there. I talked to Bolden's mom today, and she said that's one of several summer visits locked in for KJ. He'll also take an official visit to Georgia the 2nd weekend of June. Clemson's getting an official the 1st weekend of June. Ohio State, that visit's long been locked in for the 3rd weekend of June. Alabama, he wants to get to for an official this summer. Auburn's set for his bye week in October, so he's already got that planned. Florida State's in the mix for an official. He could also visit Oregon this month for a couple-day visit. Wanted to get to the Ducks spring game, wasn't able to make it, so an unofficial to Oregon this month is also in the mix. But I like where Georgia stands going into all this. He's visited many of these schools in the spring already, and Georgia's got 2 more future visits planned. He could play on either side of the ball in college, but I think we like him most as the #1 safety that could also play some corner, play some nickel, cover a lot of ground for you in the secondary, but he's an explosive, dynamic player. And I think Georgia's the one to beat going into the summer.
Steve, I gotta press pause. What is this scavenger hunt? Do you have more details on this, and can we get involved?
I should probably know more about it, but I believe that the recruits are on campus. They're divided into groups, get clues that take them on basically a campus tour. And in the end, you find Kirby. And if you go back and look on Twitter, you'll see recruits over the years saying we found him, and it's a group of recruits surrounding Coach Smart. So everyone gets to the finish line one way or the other. And there's bragging rights on who finishes first, which is where Georgia has stood the last 2 years in college football, trying to get there a 3rd time.
They know what it's like to be #1. That's cool. So Kirby Smart is the prize at the end of the scavenger hunt. A few more blue chippers that the Bulldogs are considering here. You got 5-star wideout Ryan Wingo. A lot of people want him. 5-star edge Dylan Stewart, highly coveted. There's also 4-star tight end Jaden Riddell. Now, I'm not asking will they go 5 for 5 on all the guys that we just mentioned, but if they do, Steve, what is the potential that this Georgia class surpasses Texas A&M's 2022 highest rated of all time?
Well, I think they're tracking for it. We've kind of been talking about that narrative for several months now, and then maybe when it looked like Dylan Raiola was USC bound, those conversations halted, but now we like Georgia's position for Dylan Raiola right now, which I think would be a big domino effect for whoever he chooses. So we like him for Georgia. And so with that, like you said, KJ Bolden, like Georgia there. Dylan Stewart, like Georgia there. Have crystal balls for Wingo and Riddell to Georgia right now. So really like Georgia there. When you start talking about some other 5-stars that they're in the mix for, you get to Justin Scott, the composite 5-star from Chicagoland. Crystal balls on Miami. Notre Dame very much in the mix for him. We're going to talk about him more later in the show. But Georgia's getting an official in June. They got a chance to make a big move. Williams Nwaneri visited this spring. He's coming back for an official in the summer. I like Tennessee the most there in Oklahoma, but Georgia's certainly a chance to make a move there. They're going to bring in the #1 offensive tackle in the land for an official visit in June per our Greg Biggins. Like Miami and Oregon for Baker, but again, Georgia with their track record with the NFL draft, when you have 34 players selected over the last 3 years, that's going to do a lot for you on the trail, in addition to the 2 national championships. And so Georgia in great shape for a lot of 5 stars. We could do a whole nother show on top 247 recruits that Georgia's involved in as well. A lot of blue chippers with a keen eye on Athens going into the scavenger hunt, going into June official visits. And I think before long, we'll see them atop our recruiting standings. And then it's just, will they surpass A&M or not from that class a couple cycles ago?
Steve, we talk about Georgia's pursuit of that #1 spot, but holding that position right now is Michigan, and they are still trying to add a few names. One of them, 4-star wide receiver Channing Goodwin, is set to announce his commitment this Sunday on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel, as well as 4-star linebacker Aaron Childs. You have crystal balled both of them to the Wolverines. What's your current feel with both prospects?
Yeah, so Channing Goodwin obviously announcing with us this weekend. Love where Michigan stands. He attended all the big home games at Michigan. Look, this is a young man that grew up rooting for the Maize and Blue. His father, Jonathan, played his college football in Ann Arbor before a long NFL career that included a Pro Bowl and a Super Bowl championship. And here's Channing Goodwin, who's had a front row seat in that awesome recruit section inside the Big House to watch Michigan go from a New Year's Six caliber program to a college football playoff contender, Big Ten champion, and potentially more with guys like Channing Goodwin. I think Michigan's the one to beat here going into his decision. Obviously, his quarterback, Jaden Davis, is in the fold for the Wolverines. But in addition to that, just Michigan's pro-style offense, player development, and track record. They just led the Big Ten in draft picks. And Jim Harbaugh has been as successful as any program in sending guys to the league. So I think Michigan's got a lot going for them with Channing Goodwin. And then Aaron Childs, this is one of my favorite linebackers in the country. He posted a top 10 in March. I think Michigan is at the top of that list going into his summer officials. He was back there in the spring, said it was a great experience. Everyone's welcoming. He loves Michigan's defense. I think Michigan's hit a home run with their last 2 defensive coordinator hires. That's been one of the big reasons why they've gone from New Year's Six to college football playoff with what they've done on that side of the ball. And I think it speaks to Aaron Childs. He's clicked with Chris Partridge, the new linebackers coach. Got some other contenders. You got Florida, Clemson, Notre Dame, among others. But I think the Maize and Blue are the program to beat for one of their top overall targets moving forward.
All lining up for the Wolverines. A few other Michigan targets include linebacker Cole Sullivan and edge Darian Mayo. Now, Mayo is the teammate of Aaron Childs, so we assume their recruitments could affect each other. But, Steve, what's the latest on Sullivan and Mayo when it comes to the Wolverines?
Well, Sullivan's a recent 24/7 Sports crystal ball forecast for me. Michigan and Notre Dame kind of battling down the stretch for him with some others in play. But I like the way it's setting up for Michigan. And after Goodwin, I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the next ones in the fold for Michigan as they try and add to this class that's ranked #1 nationally. This is a guy that just looks like a Michigan-type football player that they recruit. He impacts the game in all 3 phases on the high school level, had 117 tackles in 12 games as a junior, averaged over 23 yards per catch as a tight end, can rush the passer. And I think that he's really clicked with Michigan and likes what they're building. And so as it stands now, go blue for Cole Sullivan. And then Darian Mayo, he's one of the coveted guys on the defensive front for Michigan moving forward. And Clemson, Ohio State, South Carolina are some of the other contenders. But I think Michigan's a program we should be talking about more for Darian Mayo. He spent 2 days there in March, had a great visit, and talking to people behind the scenes, Michigan is near the top, if not at the top, for Darian Mayo as well.
Steve, you mentioned Notre Dame, so let's switch over to the Fighting Irish. A lot of defensive prospects to monitor as we approach the summer window. Kingston Viliamo-Asa, obviously Justin Scott, the 4-star defensive lineman, and a player that I really like the Irish for right now in 5-star edge rusher Elijah Rushing. What's the latest with Notre Dame's pursuit of those blue chippers?
Well, if Notre Dame can land all 3 of those guys on the defensive side of the ball to what's already the nation's #4 class, that's the grand slam for them. They've hit on their top quarterback target in CJ Carr, their top receiver target in Cam Williams. And it's a really talented skill player class for the Irish. But on defense, they got some work to do there. And those are maybe their most coveted guys across the board. At one point, it looked like Justin Scott was going to end up in Notre Dame's class. He had a decision date. He has now prolonged that. He's been to Miami a couple times as an upcoming official to Georgia locked in, as well as Miami. Ohio State and Michigan are also contenders for Justin Scott. Notre Dame's trying to get him back to campus in May. He had a terrific visit in the spring, enjoys the guys, enjoyed spring practice, enjoys the staff, knows how coveted he is. Notre Dame's only 90 minutes from home, which people say that's a plus for Mom, but Notre Dame's got some stiff competition there. My crystal ball's on Miami, but I'm not sleeping on the Irish. And then Blair, we talk a lot behind the scenes about rushing, and he was just at Oregon. I think Oregon moved the needle with our number one ranked edge rusher. They would make me nervous if I'm Notre Dame. There's certainly some other schools in the mix for him. Arizona is in there for Elijah rushing, and so is Tennessee. But obviously Notre Dame and the academics that they boast, they're sitting pretty for Elijah rushing going into the officials. And then I've heard a lot of Notre Dame buzz around Kingston. I think Notre Dame is well positioned. Greg Biggins had the story on his top three, which included USC getting an official on June 2nd, Notre Dame on June 16th, and Ohio State on June 23rd. But he was just at Notre Dame's spring game, talked to him afterwards, and he said what excites me most is seeing what they're able to do in year two under Coach Freeman. He said the staff has done a tremendous job of creating a contagious culture of excellence both on and off the field. And he's looking forward to seeing more, and he'll get back for an official. I think Notre Dame is in the driver's seat for him going into his 3 official visits.
All right, so those would be some big wins on the defensive side of the ball. Let's go to the other side on offense. Notre Dame eyeing O-lineman Styles Prescott and 4-star running back Kedron Young. As those recruitments play out, where do Marcus Freeman and the Irish stand currently, Steve?
Yeah, I think they're the one to beat for Styles Prescott. I was just at one of his practices this week here in the Indianapolis area. He went to Notre Dame's spring game, also visited the week before for a spring practice. I think between Notre Dame's track record on the offensive line, a smaller school setting, the strong academics, being close to Mom, I think that Notre Dame is the one to beat. Now, Alabama is in the picture. Coach Wolford was at that same practice from Alabama. Kentucky's a school that's coming on here. Colorado offensive coordinator Sean Lewis was in there today. They'll also see Styles Prescott, but I just think Notre Dame is the one to beat for him, and a decision could come at any point, in my opinion. And then Kedron Young, 5'10", 220 pounds with the breakaway gear. He's one of my favorite running backs in this class. Notre Dame loves him. They're looking for a bigger back to run alongside Aeneas Williams this cycle. And if Notre Dame can add Kedron Young, who's going to take an official visit the first weekend of June, I think they'd be very, very happy with the skill players that they've brought in this cycle. I think that would be a championship caliber type group as they try and build back this offense up to that level. And then it's about offensive line recruiting and getting those blue chippers on defense we just talked about.
Steve, earlier today, you put in a crystal ball for Aaron Butler to end up with the Colorado Buffaloes. What has you leaning Coach Prime and Colorado for Aaron Butler?
I talked to several sources about Aaron Butler today, and they, adding it all up, I like where Colorado stands. And this is a recruitment that's had a lot of movement, Blair. As you know, at one point it looked like he was going to be a Georgia Bulldog. And then not so recently, it looked like Oregon was in fantastic shape, and I'm not ruling any program out for Aaron Butler. I just think his return trip for his official visit to Colorado for the Buffalo spring game, which included getting Mom on campus, was a major needle mover. He thinks that Colorado is going to be back sooner than later. Talked about how fast the players have bought into the program. He's built a great rapport with the coaching staff, and I think that Colorado has the momentum. Now, our colleague Greg Biggins, who's close to Aaron Butler's recruitment, says that Butler still plans on taking his official visits to Miami and Alabama. So those are 2 other programs to keep an eye on in the future. But right now, I love where Colorado stands for one of their most coveted targets.
Steve, you want to know what's pretty awesome? We're already at 70 likes on the show, so I don't have to ask for 50. I can just go straight ahead with 100. So show the people. Oh.
Get these lights out.
National Star Wars Day, and Steve has 2 lightsabers. Come on. He's asking for likes in his own special way. go ahead, hit that like button if you have not already. But we have more to talk about because our War Daddy series continues with the 5-star linebacker Sammy Brown, our own director of scouting, Andrew Ivins, who's about to be on this show, and our recruiting analyst, Cooper Patagna, brought up an interesting comparison to the number 1 linebacker on their podcast. Here's a clip.
It's like the next version of Brian Bosworth, man.
Yeah, that's the comp.
Right? I mean, we could potentially see him on a Sports Illustrated cover one day with just the pads on. So, I mean, he's got it going on, man. He's got a swaggy look to him. He's got the mullet going on. He's flying around the football field. He can do a little bit of everything.
I love the comparison. Does have that swaggy look about him. I don't know if any of us could pull off that kind of hair, but I mean, mad respect for Sammy Brown. It of course makes sense why Andrew and the rankings team named him the number 1 player at his position. But from what you've seen, Steve, why is that an accurate assessment of Sammy Brown?
Well, similar hairstyles, although we do know that Sammy Brown, all his strength is natural, going back to
Fair point.
This has been a path for Sammy Brown for a long time. Started with just body weight lifts and then bar lifts with his dad when he was young, to what you see today, which when you look at Sammy Brown, from a combination of size, strength, and speed in the 2024 class, there's not a player on the level of the 6'2", 230-pound Brown, who probably just best described as a mutant with the skill set and traits that he has.
Recruiting-wise, a few dozen offers already for him, and it includes some of the best programs across the country. Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State are among the schools pursuing him. What's the latest with him? What's next for the nation's number 5 rated player?
Yeah, talking to his coach today, Travis Nolan at Jefferson, he was like, there's no wow moments with Sammy Brown. It's wow all the time when they watch him work. And that's why he's so coveted, a two-way standout for them. A guy that rushed for 1,600 yards, 2-time state champ in wrestling, that also is one of the top sprinters and long jumpers in the state. He's got his 5 finalists. He's got Clemson, he's got Georgia, he's got Ohio State, he's got Tennessee, and he's got Oklahoma. And if I was handicapping that race right now, I like where Georgia stands. You know, Brown has been to Athens numerous times, been there for a recent spring practice. He's been there for 6 a.m. workouts. Got a great relationship with Coach Smart and Coach Schumann and company, and likes the way that the program practices. The spring practice he went to, said was the most physical spring practice he's ever seen. Loves the track record and player development. And so with that, I think Georgia's in an excellent position. Now, Clemson is a program that he loves. He's been to Clemson for camp going back to 6th grade, when he lost his bag at practice, and in front of all the campers, they announce, whose bag is this? It's Sammy Brown's bag. So Sammy has to go up in front of the whole camp in 6th grade and do up downs with Dabo Sweeney. He was the first player in the 2024 class that Clemson offered, because they've had that relationship with him going back to elementary school. He's been to the Tigers campus a ton. He's going to be back for his official visit the weekend of June 2nd. Georgia will get the official visit the weekend after that. But the history that he has with the program, he says it's the best culture in college football. He just loves being on campus. Clemson certainly is very much in this race alongside Georgia. Now, the other programs that he loves a lot that are still on the table with a chance to make a run, I put Oklahoma in that next position. He's going to go there the 3rd weekend in June. Because he loves Clemson so much is why he loves Brent Venables. He's part of that whole deal of relationships and knowing him for so long. He's been to Norman a couple times, has enjoyed it, and loves the fact that Venables coaches the linebackers, loves the fact that Venables is a defensive coordinator, then loves the fact that Venables is a head coach. So that checks all the Sammy Brown boxes as far as position, play caller, and head coach. Tennessee is going to get an official visit from Sammy Brown the weekend of Memorial Day, and that is a massive recruiting weekend for Tennessee. They'll have a lot of top targets in for unofficials, but Sammy's going to come in for his official. He's got family in the Knoxville area. He's really hit it off with Coach Heupel and Coach Brian Jean Mary, and loves the trajectory of that program. That's one that was ranked number 1 this year. He thinks they're in the hunt for SEC titles for years to come. Loves talking football with those guys. Looks forward to getting back for an official visit. And then Ohio State, they're going to get the last official visit. That'll be a big weekend on the Buckeyes campus. Kingston will be there at the same time. He loves Jim Laurinaitis, loves Jim Knowles, talked about their old school mentality. And so Ohio State, he's been there a couple times, very high on the Buckeyes as well. But Georgia, Clemson, I think they're in the best position right now for Sammy Brown.
And Dogs fans watching your segment today, Steve, are just so excited about the potential for their squad.
Like button, lightsaber buttons.
It's a like saber. Yes, exactly. Hit that like button if you haven't already. Man, I hope somebody is clipping this so we can this has got to be some sort of meme or GIF or something. But thank you, Steve. We appreciate you.
Absolutely.